Anytime they feel as though we have something that is better than theirs, they want it and they will take it by force. Just look what they did to the Native Americans in this country. A pastor said something so profound to me a couple weeks ago that I tell everybody that I meet these words. I said to him, "Pastor, why don't we have family reunions no more?" He said, "Son, we do." And I said, "What you talking about?" He said, "We just call them repasts." Far too often, I have encountered situations where I know that I'm better than the people who are my superiors. And think about it, we're in 2026 and not one black person is on a piece of currency in this country. So the minimizing of black people in history is purposeful. It is not by accident. Too many Jay-Z's or too many Oprah Winfrey's, because that's who they always want to throw up as an example of black excellence. And so they will continue to fool us, and they will never recognize the vast majority of our people not doing well. The vast majority of our people never moving one social class above their parents. A lot of people think that the deportation of immigrants and the recent Supreme Court decisions are only applicable to immigrants. But if you know your history and you've studied it well, you know that that is just the appetizer and we're the entree.
Welcome to the Ryles Report, where we add historical context to life, love, and politics. The Ryles Report is now in session.
Hey, before you get into this next episode, I want you to like, comment, and share and subscribe. No, seriously, like, comment, share, and subscribe. That's how we keep adding content just like this. I believe that the content we provide is educational, enlightening, and empowering for our entire community. I know you're going to enjoy this next episode. Before we get started, grab a notebook, because this isn't the kind of conversation that you can just listen to. This is one you have to study. Today I'm going to discuss my personal experiences and connect them with race and historic inequalities. And we will also discuss the rise and fall of black communities throughout time. This will challenge you to think about leadership, accountability, and building stronger communities. Whether you agree or disagree with anything I've said, the conversation is designed to make you think about the issues of today and to ask better questions. So get your notebook ready. There are a lot of names, references that you'll want to get back to after this episode. Before we get started, I'm Richard A. Ryles, personal injury attorney for all my people in Florida, and a source for history and book recs for my people everywhere. A little over 35 years, born and raised right here in West Palm Beach, Florida, and have lived through both segregation and what we call integration, or I call desegregation. My family was the very first family to move into an all-white neighborhood. I was the first black student in an all-white school. I think that has shaped me in many ways emotionally, the way I view the world, and made me have a quest for knowledge about my awareness as a black man in America. Unbeknownst to me, there were machinations occurring behind the scenes to limit my ability to succeed. One of those things was they tried to put me in special education classes because I would not tie my shoes. And as a result, my mother saw me being hoarded into that class and protested to the principal. And I was removed from the special education classes and allowed to go to regular classes. And, you know, the proof is in the pudding. I'm an attorney today. But had I not had a advocate like my mother at that school, who knows what could have happened. I can't say that I have any true relationships from going to that school. I can say that I do have a lot of scars that I carry with me and propel me and invigorate me every day to make life better for people who are situated like me, and to improve our school system and the life for African Americans here in Palm Beach County and across the world. I really didn't even realize I had scars until the death of my mother. and my middle daughter was going through her things, and my mother was a person who wanted to chronicle my life because I am an only child. And she went through a box of things, and it contained report cards from my very first day in school all the way through the middle of high school. And consistently, my daughter told me that it said, "Richard is angry." And I know that I have a certain level of anger, much of it as a result of racial confrontations. But I did not realize that my mother was aware of this internal civil war I had going on. So I can't say that the experience was all that great for me. It was much like the experience I'm seeing on television with the young Wells kid, with the young man in Texas. I think that our experiences in these all-white environments are very similar. I did not have the tragic ending that those circumstances had, but I had many confrontations throughout the years that have scarred me and made me more aware, more keenly, I guess, vigilant about my interaction with whites, and very circumspect when I'm dealing with them. Me getting bullied and retaliating would cause a white teacher to say that I'm the person at fault and that I'm angry, never ever looking at the behaviors that caused the confrontation between me and the white students. You know, there's a reason why African American men make up 6% of the population, but 60% of the prison population. I see angry black men everywhere, primarily because society makes us that way. Choosing to be happy depends on the person and them having the coping skills necessary to be able to overlook the slights, the microaggressions that we encounter daily, realizing that the expectations for us are lower than our abilities. Far too often, I have encountered situations where I know that I'm better than the people who are my superiors in a job or on a team. But because of the dynamic of race, I can't ever achieve my total capabilities because of this glass ceiling that is placed upon most black people in this country that disallow us from being the very best that we can be. And it becomes frustrating over years and years of having this glass ceiling that we have to encounter unnecessarily. I could never understand what it's like to be a woman because I'm not a woman. And if you're not black, you can't understand what it's like to be black. The daily insults, the daily microaggressions, the experiences that we encounter unnecessarily, I can't explain that to you. You would have to experience it. In the same way I can't experience what it's like to be hit on by a man or treated like a woman, discounted many times because I am a woman. I can't explain that to you. You would have to experience it. And unfortunately, empathy is lacking, in my opinion, by a great many whites. They have no interest in understanding what we are experiencing. They can't look at the mistreatment, the maltreatment, the slights, the microaggressions, and have the objectivity to say that this is wrong. Therefore, it continues and it manifests because it benefits them. If you look at the real reason behind race and racism, because race is a false construct, it works to benefit those who are probably less well qualified and undeserving to get an edge where they should not. And we as black people have to just suck it up and live with that. And that in and of itself is frustrating and deleterious to our health. I truly believe that there are systems in place that are so long-standing that because it benefits whites in their daily lives, in their ability to succeed, in their ability to get the privileges that they receive, that the lack of empathy has become a part of their framework. I've been able to and been very fortunate to see not only America from coast to coast, but to see those very same systems at work on the continent of Africa. I've been to Johannesburg, Cape Town, Ghana, Senegal, Nairobi, and those very same systems are at work there. I've been to Central America. Those very same systems are at work there. South America, those very same systems are at work there. So wherever European people have landed, they have put in place systems that relegate people who look like me to a status below theirs, not based on merit, not based on ability, but based on race. And race and colorism are two of the twin sisters that I believe have made this world very difficult to negotiate and quite unfair to masses of people. Being an African American native or an African American whose ancestors came from Africa, I felt it was robbery for me to be desiring to go to Europe. The people who colonized Africa and brought my forefathers here in chains and had them live through over 300 years of misery, to spend my tourist dollars in Europe seemed foolish to me. And so my very first trips to Africa was to see where it all began and to give myself a better understanding of how these systems operate and how they were created and from where they originated. And it was an eye-opening experience, and it allowed me the ability to get a greater understanding of how it works here as well. What surprised me the most when I got to Africa was that the system is the same there as it is here, even with black people being in charge, and maybe worse so, because they don't realize, although they are governed by all black people, that, and this is something I really did not want to see. It's almost like having a wife that is engaged in infidelity. You don't want to see it, but the signs are there. When I went to Africa, I saw that the effects of colonialism, racism, were greater there, or as great there as they are here. And black people in Africa, for the most part, are living on the same economic and social level as black people here in America. You know, it's funny. When I was in Central America, I finally realized that the system of the ghetto is called a different thing in every part of the world, but it's the same thing. So in Brazil, they call it a favela. In Panama, they call it a barrio. In South Africa, they call it a township. And here in the United States, we call it a ghetto. Same thing, same people, same color of people. And those systems operate just as efficiently there as they do here. Those systems operate just as efficiently there as they do here. If you understand how slavery began with Spain, Spain has the most had at one time the most colonies of any of the European powers. And if you go to any one of the Spanish countries that were once a colony, the people on the lowest rung look like me. If you then, the next would be Britain. If you go to any one of the British colonies, the people that are at the lowest rung of society look like me. So the maintenance of those systems has been able to self-perpetuate for hundreds of years, and they continue to maintain themselves through a host of different vehicles. If you want to be honest, and this is not going to go over well with my religious friends, but if I were to say the virus that infects all of the countries I have identified that were colonized by Europeans, the virus that was injected into those countries was Christianity. and it was utilized by missionaries to spread and create a docile, malleable people in every one of the countries I've been to. And you can go to Africa, the slave coast, and you can find a church as big as a bathroom, but a church nonetheless, praying to God to deliver them someday in heaven. And if you understand the papal bulls that allowed slavery from Spain and allowed Christopher Columbus to go and, with the doctrine of discovery, overtake the island of Haiti, you know then that there was a religious component to slavery and to subjugation that still continues today. Since we're talking about colonization, there is someone who was able to build Chicago, for instance. Let's talk about that after this break. Most people don't realize that soldiers from Haiti began coming to the United States or to the colonies in the 1700s and fought on behalf of the French for the colonists beginning in the mid-1700s. The city of Chicago was actually settled by Jean-Baptiste Dussault. There is a statue there, if you don't believe me, that will verify that he was the founder of Chicago, a traitor, and a forgotten footnote in history that a black man from St. Mark, Haiti, founded the great city of Chicago. I think it is a part of the American system of education to minimize black contributions or to obliterate them from the historical annals because it maintains the status quo of underclass citizenship for blacks. That is done countless times. It is done so often that it cannot be unintentional. If you look at the accomplishments of Garvey or the accomplishments of Du Bois, rarely during a regular education here in the United States that is not post-secondary will you even hear the name W.E.B. Du Bois or Marcus Garvey or understand what they stood for. Never will you hear the UNIA, the United Improvement Association, which was the largest black organization created by Marcus Garvey. And so I think that it is purposeful for us to have minimal contributions to the creation of this country because it supports white supremacy. When they think about the country, their accomplishments, someone once said, I heard it last week, that they thought they learned American history, and after they truly began to learn American history, they wanted to go beat their history teacher up because he had not even scratched the surface on, number one, the perspective of American history from a total perspective, a 360 perspective, where you look at the fallibility of people like Thomas Jefferson, who was dating a 14-year-old black woman and had Sally Hemings and had multiple children with her, and she being the half-sister of his wife, or George Washington chasing a enslaved woman who had been owned by his wife, but because of coverture became his slave, and they were going to either gift her or slave or sell her to her niece. That has to be purposeful. And he chased her down for many years prior to his death. I think that history, if you understand anything about fascism, changing history, that's why our current administration is trying to erase history, taking down monuments. You know, Harriet Tubman was going to be on the $20 bill. That is no longer even possible. They've said that they have abandoned that effort. And here was a woman that was an herbalist, a military genius by all accounts. And think about it. We're in 2026 and not one black person is on a piece of currency in this country. So the minimizing of black people in history is purposeful. It is not by accident. Well, I think we have two choices. One, we continue to fight and utilize our sense of community to build stronger communities. Integration was one of the greatest war blunders of African Americans' existence in this country, or we leave. If you look at the history of the Jewish people, They were one of the, I guess, marginalized communities throughout Europe for 2,000 years prior to World War II. Once they got their homeland, which was stolen from the Palestinians, they became a world superpower. If we use that example, then that is one alternative that we should probably be exploring. But our connection to Africa is central. There are no people in this country who do not have a connection to the country from which they came that have any power. You don't see the same mistreatment of Asians as you do us, whether they be Korean or whether they be China. You don't see the same mistreatment of even Middle Easterners, Saudi Arabians, people from Oman, as they do us, because they all have a country that they can call their own or go back to that strengthens their ability to operate here in this country. And so we have to have the very same. Now, Charles Blow, the noted writer and former New York Times journalist, believed that we should be creating critical mass of people. So folks should move to Mississippi and folks should move to Atlanta and Alabama, because where we have numbers, we do well. I was just in Chicago. Where we have numbers, we do well. The problem with that is I likewise represented the Rosewood Massacre survivors. Whenever we start to do well, they rise up and try and destroy what we have. Look at Tulsa, look at Rosewood, look at Ocoee, look at Wilmington. And so I'm not so certain that we can overcome their firepower just by creating critical mass. We would have to create critical mass and contemporaneously create military might. Without military might and the ability to fight and maintain what we earn, just creating critical masses is, I think, naive to believe that that would be the singular solution to creating a strong, vibrant black existence in this country. Rosewood, Tulsa, Wilmington were an example of white supremacy overtaking black power. They saw as a threat the acquisition of black power in those locations, in those cities, in those towns, as a threat to white supremacy, because they defied what they had been taught since the birth, that black people were inferior. Well, if you believe that black people are inferior and you're working at some menial labor job at a sawmill, and you have black people owning stores, owning their own Masonic halls and schools, and operating what seemingly under better living conditions than the folks who ultimately burned Rosewood down, then the challenge of white supremacy was enough to inspire hordes of white people to try and overtake Rosewood, to burn it to the ground. Professor Dunn, who did our last podcast, said that before they burned the city down, they stole everything out of everyone's home of value. So clearly the people saw that the things that they owned and had acquired were more valuable than the things that the people who looted and burned and killed had in their homes. So anytime they feel as though we have something that is better than theirs, they want it, and they will take it by force. Just look what they did to the Native Americans in this country. Anytime they want something, they take it by force. And if you're not ready to meet force with force, well, you'll lose. I believe that a lot of people think that the deportation of immigrants and the recent Supreme Court decisions are only applicable to immigrants. But if you know your history and you've studied it well, you know that that is just the appetizer and we're the entree. Those things that we've been able to acquire are on the menu. They will never allow too many Jay-Z's or too many Oprah Winfrey's, because that's who they always want to throw up as an example of white or black excellence. Jay-Z, Oprah is an example of black excellence. And so they will continue to fool us that there is a chance here in America, because look at Jay-Z, look at all these look at LeBron, look at all these entertainers, people who have special talents, and they will never recognize the vast majority of our people not doing well, the vast majority of our people never moving one social class above their parents. I read something the other day that Coretta Scott King said that poverty is violence. And we have too many people in poverty in this country. Hunger is violence. Homelessness is violence. And so violence has been occurring to black people ever since the end of the Civil War, because we have remained, for the most part, in a bottom rung position economically in this country with little hope of moving forward. The mistake that we make worldwide, not just here, is that we think that when we elect a black person, we have an ally because they're black. Neocolonialism, which is what has occurred in Africa and across the world, is a system where you have a black person in a position of power who is controlled by white people elsewhere. They don't even have to be in the same country. And they will assist that black person in maintaining power as long as they, the white person, can control the means of production and the vast wealth of that country and or county and or city. And so far too often here in the United States, we have a form of neocolonialism. I call it corporate colonialism because now corporations have entered the political game and they understand that they can buy off a politician and control communities, that politician, for his own self-interest, selfish interests, will allow and pass legislation that allows the displacement of vast majorities of his own people. And we, as black people, unfortunately, because the person passing the law, the person acting as our figurehead, the person we placed in position and trust is operating against our interests, we don't take a second hard, we don't use our third eye in order to scrutinize their behavior. And by the time we realize what's happened, it's too late. Looking at all of our allies is important. Let's, on the other side of this, talk about who are our true allies. Whenever I think about allies, I always remember the Malcolm X quote that the most dangerous animal to the black man is the white liberal. And what he meant by that was he used the analogy of the fox and the wolf. The fox comes at you smiling. The wolf lets you know exactly who you are. And so in this analogy, the wolf would be the Republicans and the fox would be the Democrats. And currently within the Democratic Party, if you notice, we have this democratic socialist movement. And unfortunately, because of American educational system, we think of socialism and somehow have allowed even Trump to try and equate that to communism. But we live, for the most part, in a democratic socialist government. You wouldn't have your police if it wasn't for socialism. You wouldn't have free hospitals to treat you if it wasn't for socialism. You wouldn't have fire trucks and firefighters come to your home if it wasn't for a form of socialism where we collectively put our money in through our taxes in order to provide the services to maintain your roads. That's a form of socialism, whether we realize it or not. And so we have this whole big boogeyman idea and notion about socialism that really is rooted in ignorance. And here again, the great American educational system wants it that way. They want you to believe only in democracy. And democracy never really existed. I think Nicole Hannah-Jones said that democracy did not exist until 1968 when black people got the right to vote. I mean, we do have a form of socialism already existing. The same way that the Republican Party went from being the party of Lincoln to the Tea Party to currently MAGA is what parties should be doing. They should be evolving to meet the issues and problems of their constituents. The Democratic Party has tried to have this whole big tent idea and has lost great portions of its electorate. But more importantly, the Democratic Party has not delivered. Far too many people who look like me are beholding to outside interests. Hakeem Jeffries, for instance, accepts almost $1 million a year from the Israeli AIPAC, which is a pact to make sure that the United States Congress votes on the side of Israel in everything, meaning votes to give it weapons so that it can ostensibly protect itself, but more importantly, so that it can make war. And there are a number of quote unquote allies who are a member or who receive monies from AIPAC. Well, this whole new democratic socialist movement started in New York by Mayor Mandani seeks to upseat that, to overthrow the apple cart, and has been able to do it successfully in New York, and now they're in Michigan. And that might be the new dynamic where the true things that the average American needs are met, that those are primary, instead of giving us a crumb here and there. Biden wanted to erase school debt. That was an immediate relief that the American public needed. But of course, the Republicans saw that as an opportunity to claim it was socialism and claim that it was un-American, but yet they give tax breaks to billionaires and now trillionaires. So understanding that our educational system plays a part in how we critically think about these things and who our allies are. Just because you put on a Democrat suit doesn't mean that you are representing Democrat values, and it doesn't mean that the Democratic platform has your best interests at heart. When I represented the Rosewood Massacre survivors, Florida had been in Democratic control for 150 years. That's the governor, the Senate, and the House. The Republicans now have been in control for over 30 years. We didn't see much change under Democratic control in those 150 years. We certainly have not seen a bettering of conditions over the last 30 years. So the Democratic Party, if it wants our votes, has to start putting something in the pie for us that meets us where we live. Better employment. The livable wage in one of the communities here in Palm Beach County is $36 an hour. The livable wage is $36 an hour. But the median income in a community here is $23 an hour. So there is a shortfall of almost $10, $15, and people can't make ends meet. We have to understand that if they are not going to put anything in it for us, that to continue to just vote Democrat, and what do they say, vote blue no matter who, that's a foolish statement. You vote for who is going to make sure that they are going to put something in it. Now, the flip side of that is we have to make some demands. We don't make demands. We don't make demands, and we don't hold people accountable. So what we do is, if a black politician comes to our chicken dinner and scholarship affair or gives out a couple $100 in scholarships, job well done. As opposed to making sure that people are able to buy homes, people are able to send their children to school. We have some of the lowest performing schools in the United States in Palm Beach County, yet we have blacks on the school district. If those blacks aren't, one, getting our children educated, and two, making sure that black business people are participating in the over $1 billion budget of the school district, then they aren't doing us a service. And they are not allies, they are spies. Not allies, they are spies. And so when I was in Chicago and I went to the Obama Center, it was fantastic to see that black contractors helped build the Obama Center. It was a great thing to see that the Obama Center was placed in a historically black neighborhood that's history was that it was a place when blacks left the South in the Great Migration, they moved to this community. And here a presidential library has been built. It was great to see that the security company was owned by a black firm. It was great to see that the head chef and the restaurant in the Obama Center was operated by a black man. It was great to see so many black participants in the economic wealth of that center was intentionally put forward so that all of us can participate. Sadly, far too often in far too many communities across this country, black politicians don't think like that. They don't make sure, they're not intentional about making sure black people participate economically. They're not making sure that we are at the table. Somebody might get a call at the 28th hour and ask to throw together a resume and get a job, but they're not making sure that they can produce a company that can actually create 20 or 30 or 50 jobs. And that's where we have to do a better job of holding the people we place in office accountable. When you go through 250 years of slavery and black families are destroyed, and there is a concerted effort made to thwart unity, bring unity back together is something that has to be intentionally done, and it requires individuals within your community that know something about organizing, something about cultivating community. And sadly, far too many of our communities across this country don't have that person or persons that help cultivate community. I mean, Dr. King cultivated community. Dr. King got people behind a certain idea. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense got people behind a certain ideology, and because they produced the first free breakfast program. They produced the first testing of sickle cell. Producing something for the community rather than taking always is the first way to get people behind you. But you need a community leader that understands the community needs, their primary needs, and then address those needs and find like-minded people to assist in doing that. That's how you cultivate a cohesive community that works towards a common goal. I often debate with black pastors about how they allow social media to take their churches. I grew up in a family of pastors. And I can still remember when I would go, my grandfather had a church in New York, and I would go every summer and I would look forward to going to Great America and the picnic we would have at Great America. And my grandfather would drive the bus. All of my cousins would be on the bus along with the rest of the children from the church. Well, there is a certain power of community togetherness that you don't get on social media. Social media is detached. Social media allows people who would never say some of the vile things that they say to your face to say them on social media. In-person interaction creates family, creates community. I knew who Sister Charles' nephew was, and I knew Sister Charles' nephew was having some problems. And so one of the deacons in the church may go talk to Sister Charles' nephew and say, son, you can come work with me on the ship line because you need a job. These are the kind of things you won't get on social media. If you think about it, when church is going on and people are watching it on social media, well, they got the game on the TV, they got the church on the phone, and they're cooking breakfast. So they're not even really truly getting the message, and they certainly aren't getting the soul power that is created by being in community with one another sitting next to the pew. Lastly, a great writer once said that one of the things that church is meant to do is to create discipline, to create attention span. A child sitting up in an uncomfortable little suit having to listen to the pastor for an hour and 20 minutes creates the kind of discipline necessary to sit in the classroom and listen to history, science, and biology. You don't get that on social media because as soon as you get tired of this one clip, you're moving on to TikTok. And as soon as you get tired of that, you're moving on to Instagram. And as soon as you get tired of that, you're moving on to Facebook. That's what is lost by trying to have a social media movement. It can't work. We don't help one another because we don't know each other. Most people live in communities that don't know their neighbor to the left, to the right, or across the street. That's a reality. But we got friends on social media that we've never met. And we know as much about their life that they went to Jamaica and they took this other friend that's on our social media feed with them. And they were there 3 or 4 days and they stayed at the Sonesta and they went to the beach and they rode the camel and they did this and they did that. We know all of that. But we don't know that Sister Charles next door lights off. We don't know that the people across the street child is flunking English, and I'm an English teacher. And so we have become so isolated, and social media feeds into that. But more importantly, not having community organizations and community gatherings is likewise a culprit. And that is of our own doing. We can't blame white folks for that. There's a reason why the black community has lost its communal spirit. But let's talk about that on the other side of this break. You know, there is a historical perspective to why there is such disunity. If you go all the way back to slavery, first of all, you could not get married during slavery. That's why we started jumping the broom and creating our own marital ceremonies. If you understood the psychology of the slave master, it was to keep people from coming together because they were outnumbered on the plantation. And if ever everyone got together, if the house slave and the field slave all got together, they could overthrow the slave master in a day. But to tell one by giving him a extra shirt or a pair of pants, and he now can dress better than the other, that he's better than everybody else, well, now he has an ally that will squeal on the rest of the people by taking families and breaking them up and sending the husband to one plantation. There was a concerted effort and purpose in making sure that there was no sense of community. And despite all of that, we were able to create communities within communities. And so our lack of community today plays right into the hands of those who would see us as the underclass in this world. And we have to do a better job, as our forefathers did, in overcoming all of these distractions that keep us apart, whether it be economic distractions, whether it be educational distractions, whether it be geographic distractions. You know, a pastor said something so profound to me a couple weeks ago that I tell everybody that I meet these words. I said to him, "Pastor, why don't we have family reunions no more?" He said, "Son, we do." And I said, "What you talking about?" He said, "We just call them repasts." I found that to be very profound because guess what? That's when we all get together as family again, is at somebody's funeral. And what do we do when we go there? You know, we got to do better. You know, we need to be getting together. Who gonna organize the family reunion? And then it generally boils down to nobody wants to plan it. It's too expensive. Nobody wants to travel. And then it falls apart. When our forefathers conceived the family reunion, none of those things seemed to matter. They would go to a big plot of land that used to be the family property, and they would barbecue, and they would make ice cream, and they all would commune together. We done got so high and mighty, we got to be at the Hyatt or the Hilton or one of these hotels, and we got to spend $275 a person. And then we got to all chip in, and by the time somebody ain't going to put in their money, and then everybody going to be mad at them that they had to put in a little extra. And so we have to overcome the hurdles of advanced society to create community for our own families, because I know families in this city where I live who don't even know their family. I have cousins here who I've only spoken to maybe 3 times in 40 years. So I'm no better than anybody else. But the reality is that we have to do a better job of maintaining family, creating family. And, you know, it's often said that friends are the family we choose. And if you got to have a family reunion of friends, that's just as good as any other family reunion. As we wrap up this conversation, one thing should be clear. History isn't just something we remember. It's something that continues to shape the decisions that we make, along with the communities we build and the legacy that we leave behind. If this episode has challenged you, made you see something differently, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't let the conversation end here. And share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll be back next week with another edition of the Ryles Report. And as we always say, a day you don't learn something new is a wasted day. And any day on the Ryles Report will never be wasted.